Alright, so today we are going to talk about the elements of life. This goes along with the guided notes you should have picked up in class. If not, I have a copy posted on Google Classroom for you to follow along with. So let's talk about carbon and why carbon is so important. So carbon is the basis of the study of organic chemistry, and it's the compound. So organic chemistry is the study of compounds with covalently bonded carbon. So covalent bonds are like holding hands. So they share electrons or they hold hands and they go through life together. Organic compounds are compounds that contain carbon and hydrogen. Sorry. So carbon has 4 valence electrons, and the example I like to use, or the analogy I like to use, is a valence electron is like $1. So carbon has $4 to give to a friend so that they can hold hands. So carbon can form single, double, or triple bonds, and they can, going back to that dollar example, they can give $1, $2, or $3 to other atoms or molecules to hold their hands. So a single carbon can form up to 4 covalent bonds or can hold 4 people's hands. They can form long chains, the most commonly formed with hydrogen and oxygen and nitrogen. So there are some pretty common elements for life, and that is carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, and sulfur. So these guys right here, so carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, and sulfur are the main, and hydrogen are the main components for life. So the type and number of covalent bonds carbon forms with other atoms affect the length of the carbon chain and the shape of the molecule. And as y'all know, my favorite sentence is structure dictates function. So the structure of the carbon chain dictates the function of what that carbon chain is going to do. So carbon chains use their electrons to covalently bond with other molecules. So they use their dollars to hold hands with their friends. And this links carbons together to form a chain. So we can see carbon holding hands with carbon, holding hands with carbon. And it only stops when it's not bound to another carbon, or it can form a circle. Hydrocarbons are organic molecules consisting only of carbon and hydrogen. And this is pretty much just a simple framework for more complex organic chemicals or molecules. And you can see those here. Right? There's just carbon and hydrogen bound together. So carbon chains form the skeleton of most organic molecules. And the skeletons can vary in length, branching, double bond position, presence of rings. In many regions of a cell's organic molecules contain hydrocarbons. So if we think back to the previous lecture, we saw hydrocarbons in the fatty acids of lipids. We can also see them in some sugars, but not all. So you can see the length changes. There's extra branching, might be double bonding, or they might be a presence of rings. So the skeleton can change, meaning that it changes the function, right? Our skeleton and a dog's skeleton is not the same. It's the same thing for carbon chains. So functional groups are chemical groups that attach to a carbon skeleton in a particular way to participate in chemical reactions. So we talked about this when we talked about amino acids, right? We had a hydroxyl group and a carboxyl group. And those are functional groups. And then we had an R group that could be many different functional groups depending on what amino acid we want. So these are just examples of different functional groups, and how they're bound to each other. So, molecular diversity due to carbon is super important. So the variations in carbon skeletons allow for molecular diversity. And carbon can form large molecules known as macromolecules. And there are 4 different classes of macromolecules that we've learned about and we're revisiting. We have carbohydrates, proteins, nucleic acids, and lipids. We can have polymers and monomers of carbohydrates, proteins, and nucleic acids, but lipids do not include true polymers and are hydrophilic molecules. If you remember, hydro means water, phobic means scared of, so they are scared of water. Note, along with carbon, nitrogen is an important element for proteins and nucleic acids, and then phosphorus is important for nucleic acids and some lipids. So once again, CHNOPS, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, and sulfur are our elements that are important to life. So polymers, like a chain-like macromolecules of similar or identical repeating units that are covalently bound together. Monomers are the repeating units that make up polymers. So one unit is a monomer, multiple units is a polymer. To make monomers become polymers, we have something called a dehydration reaction, and it bounds 2 monomers with the loss, right, dehydration. So if we think about beef jerky, we remove the water, the loss of H2O. So one OH from one monomer binds to the H of another monomer, forming H2O, and then that H2O goes and gets released and goes off into the ether. So A plus B equals AB plus water. So we can see it here, right? They join together, they hold hands, literally, and water is released out into the ecosystem or the environment. We can do the reverse of that, and that's called hydrolysis, and it breaks the bonds in a polymer by adding water. So a hydrogen of the H2O, or water, binds to one monomer, and the OH binds to another monomer, having this reaction split. So AB plus OH equals A plus B. And we can see it here, right? We add water and usually a little heat, and we can see them break apart. So, quick concept check. You're performing an experiment that involves hydrolysis, so the adding of water to break apart a polymer. The polymer that you are working with is amylose starch. There are 300 monomers of glucose that make up this polymer. How many molecules of water will you need to completely hydrolyze or break the amylose? So if we think back, right, it took 1 water to break up the 2 monomers. So how many would we need to break up 300? $299, right? We break apart all of them and then we have 1 left over, and that doesn't bound to anything, so we won't need that extra water. All right, and we'll stop here for today. I will see you next time.